And the first question is just from a professional and probably a personal level too. Is there something in your studio that you just cannot live without?
Oh, wow. Something I can't live without. That's really tough. Because I'm a mixed media artist, I have so many things that I can't live without. I would say the sketchbook period, because you can always get different supplies. And that heavy duty watercolor sketchbook I mentioned, which is about 300, per square, per square meter, which I think is 140 pounds per square meter. It's durable. It can take a lot of different materials, whether dry or wet. And it's something that has been a wonderful constant, I would say, throughout my journey. And initially, I didn't really get into a lot of this kind of like, using these, mixed media journals on the go. I usually had something that was like, regular sketchbook paper. I had a travel journal in Iraq, so I couldn't exactly throw acrylic paint at it. But I would do different ink and pen designs because that was my forte growing up. And while I was in the Army, was predominantly, realism, ink and pencil. But when I got back from Iraq, I wanted to experiment with something new because I just felt like my artistic mojo was gone. So I figured, okay, I'm gonna Bob Ross my way until I feel better and just make sofa paintings until I figure out what's going on with me. And I did that, but I also found that, I do like acrylics. I just didn't like what I was doing at the time. But yeah, just to answer the question, I would say that durable watercolor sketchbook is something that I always have on back order, and I can't live without it.
Excellent. And then briefly, how did you start making art? How did you get into to this process in the first place?
I'm self-taught, so I've always, drawn growing up, got in trouble for it a lot at school. And as most artists do, I think, too, because, we're always like doodling in the back of the class and just, off in our own world. But it's always been a great way for me to process things. So even when it seems like, I'm doodling, not paying attention, it's actually helping me retain the information because, I'm just like trying to be present. And I think that's something that has been very helpful for me when I feel like, I have some kind of creative block, whether it's with writing or visual arts. It's something where I can actually just, work things out, make mistakes. I don't have to be super serious about creating a masterpiece. I can just flow. And I think that's where mixed media sketchbooks are so helpful because you can make those mistakes. You don't have to ever show them to anybody, but a lot of times you're going to find that, oh, this mistake actually can be incorporated into something that I actually want to do.
Or even just inspire you to a new idea. I would imagine.
Absolutely.
And then the last question that we had come through, do you have a favorite media or medium that you like to work with more than anything else?
When it comes to pencil, it's basically my foundation. So I do a lot of speed drawings, or I'm starting to do them a lot more and post them to YouTube. But when it comes to what I've always known and gone back to when just kind of feeling in an artistic funk, or what I think of immediately when I start an art project is going to pencil first. So usually, like when you saw in those demonstrations on the video, I started off with a simple sketch of where I generally wanted to go. And usually when it comes to faces, I know they can be intimidating for most people if you're not a portrait artist or really into that medium. But I do have a separate video that covers portrait drawing. So, how to figure out where the eye should go, the hairline, everything throughout the face. And it's a really good foundation to work with. So usually when I start those line drawings in mixed media, it can be, very simple like that, like I did with Franz Kafka, Frida Kahlo, and Anthony Bourdain as like, the full body. And just start from there because you might leave things flat. You might not want to shade it, or you might want to go back and, and stipple it. But I think it's a great way to say, okay, this is my number one. I need to start with an object, place, person, and then what happens next happens next. But I would say pencil is definitely my go-to because I can always say, all right, I did it, boom, done, I'm walking away. But I can always go back to it and say, I think I can do more to this.
Exactly. And can you remind our viewers about the sketch notebook that you were using? who produces that, and some of the attributes of it that you were mentioning during your video?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have on the YouTube link, which is pretty much the video that was shown today. I do have a link on the arrivalsdepartures.uk site that lists pretty much, what was being used. And when it comes to the specific supplies for that sketchbook was made by Arteza. So you want to look for something that's 140 pounds per square meter, something that's really heavy duty. And usually when you go online or you're going in person to a store, it'll list it on the booklet or on the book saying, how heavy the paper is. You want something that's typically acid free so it doesn't turn, yellow later. And something that can pretty much take anything. So if something can take watercolor and acrylics, you can really give that notebook a beating. So I really appreciate that you can, not be filled with fear if you say like, oh, I'm going to drop water onto this and the notebook's going to fall apart. So yeah, Arteza makes the book that I use, and I actually keep buying those notebooks because they've been fantastic.
And then one of our viewers says that it felt like you were pouring out your creativity during the video, and she wants to know, does your art flow like that generally, or was that just an effect of the presentation?
I get into periods where I feel really creative, and sometimes nothing's happening. So I would say that for example, when I came back from Iraq, nothing was happening. And that's when I started to do the Bob Ross kind of paintings where I was just, painting mountains and pine trees and everything like that, which is something that I do when I doodle, like when I'm on the phone or, doing something where I'm trying to pay attention, but I need my hands to do something. But I would say that once I got into, once I moved to Arizona, later on, like years later, and I was, going through, my own PTSD journey, I ended up linking up with a group that was based in Phoenix, and they were predominantly Native and Latinx group veterans group that did a lot of different paintings that were more Vietnam War era. But being able to create with them reminded me that, I didn't need to wait for anybody's permission to be myself, because I spent a lot of my time trying to find community when it felt like it didn't exist for me, and that it was just something that constantly eluded me. So meeting a group that was very accepting and open and very like, hey, here's your space to create. Don't worry about what anybody else says. It was a great reminder for me to, think the same and just say, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, what am I worried about? And even though, obviously the homecoming journey wasn't very easy, but I think that really unlocked things for me, for just hearing it's okay to create. Don't fret about what anybody else says. And I would also say, don't compare your work to anybody else either, because comparison is a thief of joy and it'll suck out all the happiness from the artistic process. But in terms of flow, I feel like later on I ended up finding what that was. And it wasn't really until I got to London that I moved here last year during the COVID-19 lockdown starting. And it was, stressful at the time, but it unlocked something where things really started to flow even better. So doing those demonstrations, it felt like it came a lot easier. And maybe, the weird silver lining of COVID-19 lockdown in London was I had a lot of time to really think about what was important to me, what I wanted to do artistically. And when I really thought about it, doing what I just demonstrated felt the best. Was pretty much, I do my line drawing, I add my shade color, I have my chosen colors or path where I want to go. And then what happens, happens. So I think reminding other people who are on their own creative journey that it's okay. Don't worry about what anybody else says. Don't worry about judgment is something that I try to give back to other artists too, and just say, don't fret if you can't draw a face right now. You'll get there because it takes practice, or, whatever the case may be that's standing in their way that they feel the obstacle is, because a lot of times it's us standing in our own way when as soon as we let go of that judgment, a lot of wonderful things can happen.
I apologize for the dog. he's all of a sudden got something going on now. Also, are you creative in other arts too, like music or film or anything like that, or do you really stick with just your artistic endeavors as far as mixed media goes?
When it comes to other mediums, I am a writer as well. So when it comes to literary arts, for sure, that's definitely a big passion of mine. Music, I wish I could play an instrument. I know I could if I practiced, but it's just not something that's come very easy to me. I can't sing, and you wouldn't want to be around for it. But like any other medium, probably with practice it would get better. But yeah, I would say when it comes to the visual arts, um, mixed media, I do appreciate a lot more. Acrylics, I prefer acrylics over oils. I didn't really even get into that until I got back from Iraq and I was painting sofa art. So that was something that was learned, self-taught, probably when I was like 24. But oh, as far as film, I recently started to dabble in animation. So I did create a short cartoon called Coffee with Kafka. Oh, the dogs. So I
I
did create a
apologize
short
for that.
animation. Oh, no worries. I did create a short animation called Coffee with Kafka, which that initial drawing that I did is something that I've drawn over and over and over again because I ended up, you know, doing 2D animation, which is so time consuming, but I want to get into it a bit more, I think, before the end of the year.
I think that's all the questions that we have. Molly, you have that slide that has MB's, or not contact information, but her sites that people can visit for more information or to follow her and look at how she's progressing. As you can see, you have your YouTube channel up there, also your Instagram page, your website and your blog. And then below that, we do have contact information for the museum as well. We'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. And as you can see, we have a few events coming up as well. Starting on Monday, we have a book talk, and that will be at the lunchtime hour from noon until 1. And then we have trivia night coming up on Tuesday night. So if you're a fan of our trivia events, we hope to see you there for that. And you could always find all of our events on wizbetsmuseum.com. Just go under the events section and you can sign up for all of our virtual events there. We are looking so forward to having in-person events, which will start again in August. So please look for information on that coming soon. And MB, we would just like to thank you again for putting together that fantastic presentation and for joining us tonight. And I hope that can bring you back again for another edition of our Drink and Draw event.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed creating with you all. And if you have any questions or, you know, need any assistance, please feel free to reach out.